Your understanding. Dunnes Stores, always there for our customers.
This is an important announcement from the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection. Due to the impact of COVID-19, emergency income support of €203 a week for a period of 6 weeks is now available. If you're an employee or self-employed and are out of work due to a downturn in economic activity related to COVID-19, you can avail of this emergency support. Simply visit gov.ie/DEASP COVID-19. Download and complete the simple form and return it to us by free post. A Government of Ireland initiative. Brought to you by the Department of Employment Affairs and Social Protection.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
All right, you're welcome back. 53106 is the text number. If you have any questions for John Giles, who is on the line. Evening, John.
Evening, Nathan.
Obviously, very strange, worrying times for everybody. How are you keeping?
I'm okay.
Good.
Housebound. I'm supposed to be. I'm in England, as you know. I'm housebound and for the over 70s, Nathan. I do go out for a little walk, though. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not bumping into anybody or anything.
Yeah, you're just getting a little bit of exercise.
A little bit of fresh air. Yeah.
12 weeks they're talking about for the over 70s will need to be isolating at home.
Yeah. Well, I heard that. But as I say, when I go out for my little walk, I don't go near anybody. I go to a park, keep out of the way.
As you mentioned, you're obviously based over in around Birmingham. Like, what have you made of watching on the British government's response over the past week? Because it seems very much at odds at what we're doing here in Ireland.
Well, I don't know what we're doing exactly in Ireland, Nathan, to be honest. Obviously, I'm up to date on what's happening here. And I think, generally speaking, they've been pretty good here.
Right. And
I think they've been pretty good.
You're obviously you're adhering to that by and large and trying to stay in as much. It is just when you hear the word 12 weeks and getting out for a little walk, it'll be trying to occupy the mind will be the main thing, I guess.
Well, yeah, but there's no football, Nathan.
I know. That's the problem.
That's a big problem. Yeah, just get on with it. You know, I mean, I don't do an awful lot anyway, Nathan.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to keep out of trouble and not get involved in anything like this, you know. But hopefully it'll pick up. I mean, the good news that I heard today, anyway, was that China, where it started, the actual thing started, actually are doing very well. So hopefully, if they can follow what they've done to get it to where they are, would be a big help.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult for everybody.
Yeah, we got to take the positives, I think, at the moment where they're going. So the football side, as irrelevant as it feels in some ways, but there's a lot of people's livelihoods at stake from top to bottom in terms of football. Just on the pure footballing side of it then, the Premier League met today. They've pushed the league back again. They've said that they're not going to have to stick to this end of June finish date, that they, by the sounds of it, intend to finish this league season. A few different possibilities have been thrown up since this night. When you were on last week, we were still expecting Premier League games to go ahead at the weekend. One of them was that they void the season completely, that there's no champions, there's no relegations, and maybe we come back with a 22-team league next season with Leeds and West Brom promoted. One is that they just press pause and we come back again in June, whenever it is, and start over and play the final 10 matches of the season. What do you think should happen?
Well, I would go with the first thing you said there, that they stop now, Nathan. Nobody wins the league. Liverpool win the league and nobody gets relegated, then promoted two teams. But, you know, I've heard a lot of objections to that. And UEFA, from what I can gather, and the clubs seem to be desperate, absolutely desperate, to play the matches that are left this season, this year, somehow, if they can, Nathan. That would be the best of the ideas that are floating around, that if they could finish the league off, even behind closed doors, because they're talking about clubs maybe taking legal action against some of the things that somebody's proposing. And as we know, the Euros are being postponed until next year anyway. So they seem to be desperate to get this season over and done with, even if it goes into the end of this year, or near the end of this year, Nathan. I think that would solve an awful lot of the problems if they could do that.
Yeah. Do you think and a lot of this obviously focuses around Liverpool and they only need 2 more victories to win the title. Do you think Liverpool need to win it on the pitch, or if they were to say, actually, let's just leave it as it is, that everyone could recognise that they are the champions and worthy champions?
Yeah, I think the people who are not involved in the clubs would accept that. I think that would be the best way to do it. But when it comes to the other clubs, Nathan, as we know, they don't work in tandem. They're always fighting against each other. And I could imagine what Manchester United's, Manchester City response would be if they were giving it to Liverpool. I think they would want it to be replayed and Liverpool not win it. You got Villa in the relegation zone, who were a match behind somebody else that they could get out of the zone. It's a very, very difficult one. I don't think they'll get together and come to a reasonable situation. I think that they'll fight among them. So that's our history over the years. The big clubs don't get together, Nathan, if there's anything favouring one of the big clubs.
Yeah, I think they probably won't end up making a decision for another few weeks until they actually get some sort of a reasonable time where they can restart. There's a lot of people who are going to be very hard hit at this. Obviously, most Premier League players at this stage are well paid. They may have to take something of a hit, but they could probably take it. Whereas you see today, Manchester United and Liverpool have come out to say they're going to pay all their matchday staff for the remainder of the season. It's not going to cost them a huge amount of money, but it's good to see they're doing that. But as you move lower down the leagues then, for the 92 teams that are there, a lot of these, like League of Ireland teams, are really going to struggle. Is this a stage where those big clubs, these wealthy clubs, need to step up and support those teams lower down, or is that expecting too much from those clubs?
I think they should do something, Nathan. My opinion is that they won't. I mean, don't forget the Premier League clubs have formed the Premier League not to be decent to the clubs in the lower divisions. You know, it's 92 was when they formed the Premier League, Nathan, and the reason they did that was because the television money was being paid to the 92 clubs, and their idea was, well, why should we, the Premier clubs or the big clubs, pay to the lower divisions? But of course, in those days, it was a lot to the lower divisions and the big clubs, because they were producing more players, in my opinion, from the second, third, and fourth division, what was then, Nathan. So they did deserve the money, whereas I can't see them being suddenly generous to the second, third, and fourth division clubs of that time now. I just don't see it, Nathan. I think they're too greedy, and they're just worried about themselves.
You mentioned that Euro 2020 has been pushed back to 2021, which raises an obvious issue for Irish football. Or maybe it's not an issue, in that Mick McCarthy's contract is due to end this summer and Stephen Kenny's is due to start on the 1st of August. And everyone has been building up to this and an expectation there that this would happen. If the Republic of Ireland win the playoff, which is scheduled for June, that may well not happen, and they are to qualify, should Mick McCarthy take the team to Euro 2021, even though Stephen Kenny's due to take charge now? I
would think so. I mean, Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny haven't created this problem, Nathan. It's been thrown at them the same as it's been thrown at everybody else in football. And you just have to postpone it as the European clubs are maybe postponing things. I think Mick's situation and Stephen's situation is as it is. They haven't created it, and the idea was that Stephen would take over, or the plan was Stephen would take over for Mick whenever we wouldn't qualify for the Euros, or if we did qualify for the Euros. And my opinion is that should still stand. Mick hasn't created it. Stephen hasn't created it. It's something that's happened to them. And my take on it would be that you would postpone that agreement that they have.
Because it is such unusual times, could you see a situation where Stephen Kenny could go in alongside Mick McCarthy and work under him, work beside him for a 9-month period building up to Euro 2021, where Kenny is almost in charge of, say, Nations League games and warm-up matches, but when it comes to the tournament itself, Mick McCarthy's in charge? No, I don't think that would be a good idea, Nathan, at all. I think obviously Stephen could go and be to see what Mick does. I don't think he would be part of being part of the coaching staff is very. It's a very personal thing that you employ people
that you've worked with before, and you can do it. I don't think that would be fair on Mick for Stephen to. I don't think Stephen would do it anyway, to be quite honest. It could be a person who goes to the training, watches the matches, talks to Mick. All those things could be done without being part of the staff, Nathan. I think it's too much to put somebody, in Stephen's case, I don't think he would want to be part of the staff because you're in the dressing room, and that's a very personal situation for the existing manager to pick his own staff and have his own staff in the dressing room. I don't think Stephen would expect to do that, but there's no reason why he couldn't talk to Mick, find out after the matches what Mick thought, who he thought played well, and Stephen would have his own ideas from there. But definitely, I don't think he'd be part of the staff.
It does feel like there's so many football matches on television now. To go from, was it last week on a Thursday night where you might have 10 Europa League matches live on a variety of different channels to having absolutely nothing. And there's far greater things going on in the world right now, John, that sport in some ways feels like a small thing, but as life comes back, it'll feel like a big thing again. It just probably underlines this past week that real importance that sport has in people's lives. Oh,
definitely. I mean, the football can be trivial in the situation now. Obviously, we're talking about it now because an awful lot of people are interested in it. But when you see people dying of this virus, then football is way, way, way down the list of priorities. But I think it'll be a big help if and when we do get back. When we get back, it means that hopefully the virus will have diminished. To allow people to get on with their lives in an ordinary way. That's the most important thing.
We're going to take a quick break. We have a lot of text coming in, 53106, John. We'll get to them in just a moment.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
Lunchtime Live.
I have something to tell you all. You may have heard that there were 69 new cases of coronavirus overnight. Well, I am one of them. I have the coronavirus and I have been broadcasting from the hot press for a reason. I am in self-isolation since the weekend when I became unwell with it. And for as long as I am able, guys, I am going to stay on air with you because I think it is important. Radio connects people and it makes us feel, I believe, at a time like this, that we are all in it together. This is what I can do at the minute, and I will continue to do it, and I will continue to talk to you about how you're getting through it, and I'll tell you how I'm getting through it.
Lunchtime Live with Ciara Kelly. Weekdays from midday on News Talk.
Panadol presents Homegrown Heroes. Meet Eileen Power, a volunteer with the Finnisk River Riders.
Finnisk River Riders are a special needs riding club. We started small and now we train and compete in Special Olympics competitions.
The active ingredients in Panadol Extra Soluble relieve 5 types of tough pain to help you meet pain with strength and keep doing what matters most. Panadol Extra 500mg, 65mg soluble effervescent tablets contains paracetamol. Always read the label leaflet.
It's finally here. The electric car that charges you less, much less. Introducing the new Renault Zoe, Ireland's most affordable electric car with a range of 395 kilometres, saving you a minimum of €9,000 versus other long-range electric cars. The new Renault Zoe, starting from €26,990, the affordable electric vehicle for every day. Visit our new Zoe launch in selected dealers from the 19th to the 21st of March. Price excludes delivery and related charges. See Renault.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
All right, you're welcome back. It's Thursday nights Off the Ball. John Giles is with us live on the line, so if you have any questions for John, do get them into us on 53106. First text in from Simon in Dublin. Not a question for John, but just to say that back in 2011, I got a kick in the shin, a relatively minor knock, but a small cut allowed an infection to get in and take hold. I ended up in Beaumont with cellulitis for 2 weeks, which was quite unpleasant. A friend bought me John's biography, A Football Man, written in conjunction with Declan Lynch. It's a brilliantly entertaining read. Seeing as there's no football on at the moment, I'd recommend it for anyone who's missing sport and has a bit of time on their hands self-isolating, which is a nice thing to hear. John, from Simon in Dublin.
Very good. That's a few years ago as well. And I hope he recovered from his injury, especially after reading the book. No, it's very nice to hear, Nathan.
You might have to do a bit of a rewrite. There's an extra decade of knowledge there now that you could get a couple of more chapters out of.
I don't think so. I think once you do it, and that's the end of it,
A text in wondering about your memories of playing with Paul Madeley at Leeds. Just how good a player was he?
He was great, Nathan. He was a great lad. First of all, well, all great players don't have to be good, but he was a real Yorkshire lad. No fuss, no bother about him. Nothing was too much trouble. We used to call him Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock had no emotion,
right.
As you know, if anybody watched the series at that particular time. If Paul scored a goal, he didn't score many, but he just jogged back, a little grin on his face, never made a fuss about anything. But he was so versatile, Paul, he was unbelievable. When I first went to the club, he was playing centre-half in the reserves, and he was a bit stocky in that. I didn't think he was going to make it, to be honest. I didn't think he was going to make it. He didn't look very mobile, but he trained and trained and trained, and he became the fittest lad in our club. He was so versatile. Actually, it went against him in many ways, Nathan, because he never had a regular position in the team. He could play right back, he could play left back, he could play centre back, he could play in midfield. He could play in all those positions. So when I hear anybody, and a lot of people say to me, John, I'll tell you the Leeds team. And they can tell me the Leeds team, and Paul Madeley is never in it.
Right.
Because he played a lot of matches, Nate, but because he played in different positions. And he was a terrific lad, he never made a fuss. I used to have a joke. I got on very well with him. I have a joke. I'd say, Paul, if I crack a joke and I get a grin from you, it's just as good as getting a big laugh from anybody else.
Right.
And he would just have a little smile on his face. No bother, no fuss, nothing. He was a terrific lad and a terrific player. Nathan, terrific. I think if we had Paul Reaney playing at right back, who was also a very, very good player, I think Paul Madeley would have got into the England team at right back.
Yeah, because there was a story, wasn't it, around the 1970 World Cup where Reaney got injured and Alf Ramsey called Madeley in, but he actually turned it down because he felt while he'd be a squad member, he wouldn't actually play, and he didn't want to just go along as a passenger.
Yeah, that was Paul. I was very close to him very close to him anyway. And he was picked in the squad. No, he wasn't picked in the squad, obviously. And somebody, I think Paul Reaney, pulled out, and he was brought into the squad, right? And his take on it was, well, if I've only brought into the squad, I've no chance of playing, which wasn't true. And I said, Paul, you have a great chance of playing. If Ramsey sees you playing in that position, you'll definitely be in. And he said, no, I'm not going. That was Paul. He just, he made up his mind, and he'd stick with that. But he was a genuine lad, great on the pitch. He was just brilliant, and what a lad to have in the club from Don Rigby's point of view. To say he could play right back, centre back, left back, midfield. Actually played centre forward one time. Paul, he was just that type of lad. He was a great athlete, and like when he played, it probably would be the old-fashioned or the new-fashioned holding midfield player with Bremner himself playing in midfield. But I remember playing with him, we'd be on the attack and we'd lose the ball and we'd be getting back, and the three of us would be sprinting as best we could. Vroom. Just go into overdrive, Nathan, and go past, leave us way behind. But it was his attitude and approach. He was a very, very quiet lad, no fuss about him, just got on with the job. Did his best for the team every time he played. He was a terrific lad and a terrific player.
By the sound of what you're saying there, with what happened at the World Cup in 1970, he was almost too modest for his own good.
Yeah, he was just, he was a very independently minded lad. He thought, no. And I said to him as best I could, Paul, I think if Ramsey sees you playing at right back, I think you'll get in the team. And he said, no, I'm not going.
And you knew you wouldn't be changing his mind?
No chance. No chance. I think he was wrong, by the way. But anyway, that was a personal thing, in my opinion, that if Ramsey had seen him playing in that position, he definitely would have got in.
You obviously need those type of characters within great squads as well. People who can put the head down and can work hard and sort of set the attitude in training and make sure things are done right. Like that Leeds dressing room, as you look back at it over the course of a decade or so, was it always a good, strong, healthy dressing room, or were there times, maybe even leaving the 44 days of Brian Clough to one side, were there times where the wrong characters came in and it looked like it might destabilise things?
No. No, I think Grevy got rid of all the bad characters before, just as he took over for manager. So when I joined the club, there were no bad characters in it, Nathan. There were a few changes over the years. You know, Jim Storey, Ian Lawson came, Willie Bell came and went, but they were all good lads who gave their lot to it. There's no doubt. No, there was. Well, Don was a great manager, so he would ask us, right? Anybody got anything to say? And you could say it, and then he'd say, "Okay, you've all had your say. Now we get on with it, and this is what we do." So you had time to. You did have meetings where actually we'd have a crisis meeting after losing one match in 6, where did it all go wrong? But we'd have a few rows. Big Jack would be in the centre of many rows because he had his own opinions on football. But once that was done, it was done. And once we got on the pitch, there was a great spirit among the lads, Nathan. There's no doubt about that.
Well, you often touch on that, I think, the importance of the right signings for a manager. And we had Chris Wilder, the Sheffield United manager, on the show last Thursday night, actually, and he was talking about the Irish players at the club being the right character, the likes of Dave McGoldrick, who maybe aren't scoring the goals, but have the character you want in the player, and trying to get that balance right then this summer when Sheffield United will have a lot more money to spend, will be expected to go and buy a different type of player, but to try and retain that character and decide it's a very difficult thing to do. It's clearly part of the genius of a manager like Don Revie, was that he knew not just the talent, but also somebody who would fit into the dressing room.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is about Tom, when we got established, he didn't make many signings, really. You know, from the time I got there, Alan Clark, Mick Jones would be the main sign. Most of the other players in the club at that time were there. I mean, later on he brought Gordon McQueen and Joe Jordan, who were terrific lads as well. But I think a lot of the managers find out, Nathan, they do the homework. What's he like as a character? They've got contacts within the game, and find out before you like. The football is a very, very close knit community. That if you hear of a headbanger, or if there is a headbanger, you hear about him very quickly, Nathan. To be honest, you know, it goes through the club. There's a lot of gossipy stuff like that. So particularly as a manager, you would know somebody at the club that you were buying the player from just to check it out. And Don did that. You know, he got Mick Jones in, he got Alan Clark in, Joe Jordan, and all steady. Alan Clark was a bit temperamental, but like Les Cocker did say to him Alan, you were a star at Fulham and Leicester. He says, but you're all stars here. So it would stop Alan from getting a bit big-headed or cocky, or anybody else for that matter. No, that's the way it was. You know, there was nobody got too big for their boots.
A text in, an interesting one, John, wondering, what is your biggest regret in football?
Biggest regret? Because, to be quite honest, Nathan, I don't have a big regret.
It's a good place to be.
I'm not trying to be funny or smart here, you know. I was very lucky to do most of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Manchester United when I was a young fella. I went to Manchester United. I was there for 7 years, and I didn't have any ambitions to go to Leeds. They were in the second division at the time, and when you move as a footballer, then you don't know what's in the future. And I was very lucky to go into a situation where I played for a team of the type that I wanted to play in, which were good lads, good players, good manager, and they were very, very enjoyable times. So I really didn't. Obviously, I played the matches where I didn't play very well, and a couple of cup finals and that I wish I'd played better. But regrets, I couldn't honestly say that looking back, I had regrets about this, that, and the other.
It is a great position to be in, that you know you can look back and not have any major regrets and not be bitter about things in any way. When you meet up with former teammates or players of that era, do you find that many of them do have regrets, that there are things that are still really bug them and can get them down even years later?
No, not really, Nathan. You know, I was there for 12 years, so most of the lads were there at that particular time. And when I go back to meet the lads, meet them, it's every so often. We don't get together as often as we should, and the years go by. But when we do get together, it's as if we've never been apart. Because what I find in the situation that we were in, it was like being in the army together, Nathan.
Right.
We depended on each other. Like we played behind the Iron Curtain, I think in Leipzig, like the team that's playing now, in a winter's day, and there wouldn't be the television covering the matches like you did and it was hard. They'd get stuck into you. The referee wouldn't be very favourable towards you, and you had to stick together. And we had to do that in league matches as well. You're only as good as the people you play with. But if anybody tried to be too tough with us, then we'd had everybody in the scrap. There was nobody left out on their own in that way. And that's a bond that you have for the rest of your life, actually. And I'm not trying to be too sentimental, but that's a fact. Because you depend on each other, you play for each other, you play with each other, you have your good days. But, say Norman Hunter was having a bad day, you wouldn't be getting on to Norman. There'd be nobody getting on to each other. You'd work it out and you'd play for each other. And that's team spirit, Nathan, as we say. And obviously having a great manager encouraged all those particular things.
And you're talking like that, John, sort of almost half a century on, in many ways, from playing with a lot of these players. Were you aware enough at the time that bond that Leeds team had was different to what an awful lot of teams had? Like, an awful lot of footballers go through their careers without ever getting into an atmosphere like the one you had at Leeds.
Well, I was very lucky. I joined it when I was 22, and I was fairly young myself at 22. And Don had taken over. I think he'd been on manager for a couple of years at that time. And he had Bobby Collins there, who was a great Scottish player. Now he was 10 years older than me. And he set the trend, if that's the right word, at Leeds. He was a great player. He played for the team. He demanded that of the players around him, the young players. Norman Hunter, Billy Bremner, Terry Cooper. These were all young lads coming into the team. Bobby Collins was a great example, training-wise, in the club, in the dressing room, and demanded everything on the pitch of himself and people around him. So that spirit was there from the time I got there. And what happened then, obviously we all got older and we got better players in that were there and became a great team. But with that bond and fighting for each other and playing for each other, never left us until obviously we had the Clough situation when Don left. So it was a pleasure to play with those lads. They were great players and a great attitude.
John, great to have you on tonight as always. You're going to be on with us over the next few weeks. I mentioned earlier on we're going to do some of the best 11s of the last 50, 60 years. We're going to start with Liverpool next week, so we'll let everybody know about that again on Wednesday, and they get their thoughts in, and we can compare notes next Thursday night. But mind yourself over next week.
Okay.
Enjoy the walks. Don't stop and chat to anybody. Just get back home again.
Okay.
We'll talk soon. All right.
Cheers, Nathan.
Tommy Walsh
Nathan.
is up next here on Off the Ball.
Join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter.
At Guaranteed Irish, we believe enterprise is at the heart of thriving communities.
Like LIA, a professional association that's been supporting and developing those working in financial services in Ireland for over 40 years, offering